suspends issuance of certificates of return for Zamfara governorship and assembly election winners. 3 billion naira bribery allegations, AAC, PDP at loggerheads. I am Mary Anacon, and this is Plus Politics. River State is still in the news from APC not having a candidate to election results declared inconclusive to allegations of bribery by Governor Wike. Now, I spoke with Martin Lumber earlier on Zamfara State supplementary elections and, of course, a little bit tied to River State. All right, so INEC has suspended certificates of return issuance to Zamfara governor and members of the House of Assembly and all of those who won the election. Now, the court has said first and foremost, INEC has said that it was just served court orders cancelling the primaries conducted by the Zamfara State APC. Now, the case which is that the elections or the primaries were not properly conducted, and according to the judge, it was in contravention of the Electoral Act. Again, it just takes me back to what happened in River State, and one would wonder, didn't the APC learn anything from what he had to suffer in River State?
Well, you must know that politicians, they jostle for power desperately. And because of the intensity of the hustle for power, they often contravene what you see as the norm, what you see as the rules. Especially in our climb, it's more or less a do or die. So to that extent, it is not surprising that they have not really learned anything from their experience in River State. Now, going forward, it will be necessary for the laws to be amended to checkmate some of these excesses by the politicians. To my mind, what happened in Zamfara was just, if you like, rascality taken too far. Mind you, before now, the story was that Zamfara will be like Rivers. There won't be any candidates for any of the elective offices. But all of a sudden, they were able to get a judgment from the courts in Zamfara State. I wouldn't know how that came about. But apparently going to appeal, the Sokoto appeal, they looked at the matter and they came to the conclusion that there was no reason why that happened. The politicians of the APC ought to have been stopped from the very beginning. So where we are now, I want to believe that head or tail, APC is likely to lose the Zamfara, positions. All of the political offices, they are likely to lose.
Now we know that the Court of Appeal had set aside the judgment of Zamfara High Court, which allowed the APC to field candidates, which you have just mostly spoken of. Now, the judge again held that the party had made 2 unsuccessful attempts to conduct primaries in the state, and instead of doing the right thing, they actually constituted a committee of sorts, which allowed them to submit names to INEC. But then, and this one way or the other is not okay with the courts. The courts are saying you should have had a primaries. Now, if this were to be a case between 2 parties, maybe I would have agreed with you when you said, oh, it's a do or die affair. But it's an inter-party situation where you could come to an agreement of sorts, because, again, I go back to the Rivers case. Every single person on every ticket lost because of one person. Because of the governorship, every other person lost. So why does it seem that, we keep trying to circumvent the system, knowing that most times you may not be able to get away with it? Yes, you can, but for how long? I mean, look at, they've gotten to the final stage where they should be able to, move on to other things, but now this is resurfacing again. I remember the day when the judgment came out. It was in the thick of the elections, or the day before elections, and there was a lot of rejoicing. But then the homework they should have done was not done.
Now, this is a bigger problem. When we look at Rivers, you must know that this is probably the second generation of the kind of scenario we're seeing in Rivers. The first generation, the first, issue was when Obasanjo mentioned that there was a K-leg in the primaries that produced Rotimi Amechi. And to straighten the leg, they brought Omeha, a cousin to Amechi. And of course, you know that PDP went on to win the election and Omeha became governor, but of course it was short-lived.
Yes.
Now, where we are with the Rivers again, the second incarnation, perhaps, of this kind of problem, it shows you clearly that no matter how you do it, unless the laws are very muscular, people will always look for the jelly part of the laws. They will always look for a way to circumvent the system. Now, for me, the Zamfara episode is impunity taken too far. And this is simply because even when you have a few days to the election or a few weeks to the election and you hear things like whether INEC likes it or not, our candidates must run. Whether INEC likes it or not, if for any reason they stop us, then there will be no elections whatsoever. Those are heavy statements. And you must also look at the origin of all of these problems. The origin was whether to have direct primaries or indirect primaries. And at a point, because of vested interests, the party said, you know what, in certain places we'll have direct primaries, in other places we'll have indirect primaries. And of course, whichever way, head or tail, this is where we are. But don't forget that the outcome of the Zamfara episode clearly shows you that there is something wrong with the system. Zamfara is an APC state. The government at the center is APC. Now, the party chairman happens to be a former governor and also a former labor leader. Now, if you begin to have all of these kind of things playing out with experienced hands, if you like, supervising the shredding of democratic norms, it is really, really sad and it is really unfortunate. And I think that for our own good, we need to address these problems holistically because, again, a side to it is that you bring people that ordinarily have no business within the political dynamics of Nigeria, and they take on authority, they take on power, and this is what you get. How do I mean? If you look at the beginning of all of these shenanigans, you must know that at some point, somebody was said to have declared his asset, and that person was said not to have. Another person volunteered to show that, yes, these are my assets. At the end of the day, we didn't see anything. Don't forget also that somebody traveled for medical, if you like, tourism, so to say, and at some point we were expecting disclosure that, yes, this has been my challenge, nothing of the sort.
So we don't change the conversation.
Yes.
But you see, but that is subject to it's the person's prerogative to either make it public or not, because it's private. And
it's debatable.
But
because the money you're spending is public.
Let's bring it back home now. Yes. Let's go back to the APC and the problems bedeviling the party. A lot of people, on one hand, are complaining about the fact that the party chairman has rubbished the internal party democracy. But then there are other people who are of the school of thought that the people themselves within the party have rubbished themselves, and not necessarily what Mr. Oshomole has done that has, somewhat bedeviled the party. Because we see this issue of direct and indirect primaries raising its ugly head again and again in all of the APC imbroglios across the country. What is Oshomole's role in all of this? Can we really blame Oshomole single-handedly for causing all the troubles across the country? Or can we also say there is a deep-rooted greed in the APC, which is the party that everybody was hoping would bring the change that they said they were going to bring?
Now, you must know that power play must have a face. But that is not to say that the face is actually the power behind the play that you see. What that simply means is that certain things cannot happen unless they get approval or the nod from those who actually sit on the power. By that I mean that Oshomole is the face of this power play, but the power itself is not really in his hands. So we'll leave that there. Having said that, what has happened is clearly a travesty. How do I mean? If you have a standard, and everybody is supposed to align himself or herself to that standard, we won't be having what we're having now.
Is there really a standard in the APC? Because it looks like with all of the things that have been happening, can we really say there is a standard? Because we could see a different, permit me to use the word loosely, a different standard for, the president emerging, and a different standard for the governors and the houses of assembly. So is there really a standard? And if there was to be a standard, why wasn't it followed in the first place? We wouldn't be having this conversation.
There isn't really a standard. They work with each challenge as it comes, apparently. So to favor a person, they could manipulate an agreed standard for that office, for instance. And by the time they move on to the next office, the rules change. Let me even shock you. From what has happened in Zamfara, I dare say that actually Lagos is open. The primaries that produced the governor-elect, there are still heavy question marks to the process. I'll leave that there. But I believe that it is already in the public domain, all of the things that played out that led to the emergence of Sanwo-Olu. And if they take it, Nigerians will be shocked what will be revealed. Now, squarely, Oshomole has done his bit. He appears to me like someone who is in a hurry to apply certain reforms, but those reforms have not been judiciously and holistically set out as a blueprint. Now, what I was saying is that Oshomole appears to me like someone who is in a hurry to get certain things right. But you cannot go to any place without a map, without a direction, without a blueprint. And you must deliberately sit down and put these things down. And if for some reason you feel that you cannot go solo, you must bring in other stakeholders to look at some of these issues and trash them out. But it will appear that some of the things that we've been seeing and hearing, these things have been impromptu. They have been on the impulse, and that is why we're getting all of these things looking as though they are scattered. And to that extent, it is necessary for them to sit back and look at all of these things and draw up a plan, have a blueprint that they can be guided with. As a result, I must tell you that there is no plan in their plan.
It makes me wonder, and not that I want to push further on this issue, but then it begs the question: what happened to the structure that held strong in 2015 compared to the structure in 2019? Could it be, I'm not in any way alluding, but I'm saying, could it be with the crisscrossing of members from one party to the other? Maybe that is what has shaken the structure that was there in 2015, which looks seemingly a bit better than what we're seeing in 2019. Could it be?
I very much doubt that. You must know that the common resolve of most Nigerians, whether they were right or wrong, that is debatable. But that common resolve was that the government of the day as of 2015 needed to be changed. And it became a sing-song. It was now a chorus across Nigeria and probably across some of the hotbeds around the world. If you listen to the former president, he said that yes, the United States got interested, they got involved some way. At least we're aware that some of the governors from northern Nigeria were hosted at a certain place and all of that. So to that extent, the common enmity and the common resolve of 2015 cemented the coalition, cemented the push that brought about the change of government. But the way the balances begin to tilt, I won't be surprised if the party splits in no time. Again, I foresee a situation where, with the outcome of the presidential election, the president is likely to be more assertive. He may not really need some of these hangovers, from 2015. And people must really look out for that. By that I mean that we're likely to see a very powerful president, and it is not healthy for our democracy.
Again, talking about hangers-on, I mean, politics is a game of interest, whether we like it or not, and these interests could span through all sorts. There was a time when the president's wife did say that, you know, there are people, there was a cabal of sorts that was not letting her husband do the right thing. And if you're now alluding to the fact that if the president is too powerful, it might not be healthy for democracy, maybe him being powerful might just be in the best interest of the people.
Good question. Now, there are two things we need to look at here. One is that, yeah, politics, game of interest. What is democracy? The truth is, apart from all that we are familiar with, government of the people and the rest of it, democracy really is all about balancing power. And once power tilts in one direction too heavily, the polity is in trouble. That is the issue. So we have a conflict of the politics being a game of interest and the democracy being a balance of power. Now, we have gone into presidential system of democracy in order to be able to check power, make sure that power is given in the doses that is best for the polity to evolve, to develop. If you are taking medication and they say to you, take 2 tablets in the morning, 2 in the evening, and for some reason you take 6 at a go, or 4 at a go, you know that that is an abuse. So it's the same thing. If you give the president an overdose of power, we're in deep shit. That is what it will translate to. So we need to check, because there are too many things that show clearly that where we're headed is not in our best interest. So far, the latitude that the president has enjoyed has become very dangerous for our own well-being.
Back to the Zamfara APC situation. Now we all know that from the look of things, this might go in 2 different directions. Either they lose out or they come up with some fresh ideas that would address the situation, but we do not know what it is. I want to know what your take is. Going forward, where do you see the Zamfara situation ending up?
To be frank, that case ordinarily should be a non-issue, should be a dead issue. But because of interference, I'm aware that at some point the Attorney General actually wrote to INEC, the Attorney General of the Federation. He had no business, he had no stake in the matter. So that interference caused to question the neutrality, are you with me, even of the electoral body, because they had no business even responding to his letter. So where we are now is that Nigerians must take the process, must take the viability of our democracy, which is why I'm saying that if we leave it in the hands of some of these characters that we're seeing, going back to the president's wife, you remember that she said with the way things were going, she wasn't likely to participate in the re-election campaign of her husband. But what did we see? You know, it tells you that the way people respond, the elasticity of getting engaged is not really premised on what you believe in. It's not really premised on ideology. It's not really premised on looking for the greatest good for the greatest number. At the end of the day, some people call it a matter of stomach infrastructure. Some call it a matter of self-interest. But the summary of it all for Zamfara, as far as I'm concerned, it will be a travesty of justice if for any reason the Zamfara collective are recognized.
Okay, the governor, Abdulaziz Yari, had restated that he was going to take, in fact, the first time the judgment came out, he had said he was going to the appeal court. They went through the whole process. Now, there is no other court to go to after now. Even if the APC were to conduct primaries, it's a tad bit late. So do we see the next person in the vote count taking over the governorship? But where does that leave the members of the National Assembly who ran on that ticket? If there be any who won in the first instance, do we see collation of results taking place because it was inconclusive? So what do we see? I want us to look at that, because Fayose, former governor of Ekiti, was one of the first persons to have applauded and hailed the appeal court's verdict on the Zamfara primaries, because he thought that it wasn't done with due process. But in summary, who becomes the governor of Zamfara State? Who takes the place? I mean, what would INEC's next position be? Because INEC, of course, has said they're bound by law. They will adhere to whatever the court says. But now, I mean, I know that you don't have a crystal ball, but
No, it's
where
a,
do
it's
you
a
see
straight,
that?
it's a straightforward matter. You know, if you are in a contest or you're in a competition, and at some point they discover that you were not qualified in the first instance, by legal, terminology, clearly it was null and void. In fact, you never existed. So the next person in line obviously will take, yes. So that means that the PDP candidate will become governor, which is why I'm
And
also
that means
saying
the APC loses another state.
all over, across board, they lose. It's a straightforward matter. It doesn't require interpretation. It doesn't require looking at any crystal ball. It's very straightforward. PDP will take the seats, and I'm also saying for Lagos, they need to be very, very careful. That is also open. I'm surprised that people are not looking at it. It is very, very open. Nigeria is an interesting country. It's very open.
Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed on that one. Thank you very much, Martins
Pleasure.
Lumber, for
Pleasure.
speaking with us.
Pleasure.
We'll be right back after this break. Now, moving to River State, Dr. Kubi Udofia, a legal professional, gave his view on the River State saga. Let's take a listen.
As regards River State, I think some people were, whether rightly or wrongly, a bit relieved when some of us heard that APC wouldn't be on the ballot, and the Supreme Court kind of foreclosed their chances of contesting in the elections. Though it was sad news for some of us saw it as good omen because, I mean, we know how River State is. They have that precedent, of violence during election period and all that. And so the permutation was that the election would be relatively peaceful, and then maybe a walk in the park or a tea party for the ruling PDP in the state, given that they had no other strong opposition to contend with. But, I mean, most of us were wrong, given what is going on at the moment. We know that in the course of time, the leader of APC in the state, Governor Chibuike Amechi, former Governor Chibuike Amechi, he aligned himself with the AAC, decided to support their candidate. And of course, the consequences of that is what we're seeing now, because it's almost as if APC were on the ballot. And, I mean, we thought we had seen it all. Only for some days ago, I think 2 days ago, 24 hours ago, the deputy governorship candidate came out with a statement. I mean, I read it first in the papers. It was in the papers, and it actually deposed to an affidavit showing that, to show that he was really, that what he stated there was really the truth of what he had stated. He gave most of his statement on oath. Said they were given conditions, several very stringent conditions by Governor Chibuike Amechi in exchange for supporting them. And one of the significant ones was that they should sign an undated letter of resignation, meaning that any time in the course of their tenure, it could be a day after inauguration, they could be told the letter will simply be dated and their resignation will take effect immediately. And other conditions were given in terms of numbers of commissioners to be appointed by former Governor Amechi, in terms of contracts to be approved, budgets, and so many other stringent conditions. I mean, some of us were exasperated. And of course, that wasn't the end, because hours later, the governorship candidate, Engineer Wara, came out to debunk those allegations. His own version is that it was actually the PDP, through Governor Amechi, who tried to bribe. He said he alleged that a bribe of 3 billion was offered to him, and he turned that down. And he said he actually disclosed that to Mr. Ye, his former running mate, his LSY running mate, and that Ye himself, the rumor is that Ye himself has been offered 200 million. I mean, all these things are in the realm of speculation. One can't read because it's like your word against my word. But what probably makes Mr. Ye's testimony more maybe acceptable is that he gave it on oath. I mean, if he's actually lied or it's established that he has lied, he may be guilty of perjury. But at the end of the day, these things are in the realm of speculation. But commonsensically, if you want to analyze these allegations, you look at Engineer Awara's allegation of 3 billion and you wonder, 3 billion, that's a lot of money. Where would Governor Amechi get that sort of money from? And why would he offer him that kind of, because you look at the permutation in the first place. Governor Wike, sorry, mix up that, Governor Wike. In the first place, why would, if I were Governor Wike, I would ask myself, why would I offer this man 3 billion? 3 billion for what exactly? When it's clearly obvious that PDP, coalition is going to continue on the 13th of April based on what INEC has announced publicly. And PDP, clearly, they are on their way to victory. They are going to sweep the polls. So why would he offer this guy 3 billion to do what exactly? And that's a lot of money. We're not talking of 3 million, 300 million, 3 billion naira. But as I said before, these things are all in the realm of speculation. But at the end of the day, it just shows, the character of the politicians we have in this country. It's just treacherous. One day, they are here. The next, they are there. And Mr. Ye, he's not completely, he can't completely exonerate himself or insulate himself from blame because, initially he accepted the terms and conditions. What was he waiting for? And he stood for the elections. We would assume that these conditions were made to him prior to the election. And he was okay with it. Okay, what if he had won the election? What if he was rigged into power or probably had won the election in quotes and was declared winner? We wouldn't hear of this. We'd just hear, what we'd probably hear would be one day, oh, he has resigned, mysteriously. And maybe he wouldn't even say anything. He'll be settled and he'll walk away. Because these conditions were not made 24 hours ago. So why did he wait so long to make this revelation? Is he telling us that he's completely clean? Does he want us to regard him as a saint or hero now? No, I don't think he's a hero. I think all of them are equally culpable. It just shows, the electorate, the kind of politicians we have, that they are just in it for themselves and their pockets. And it's quite disappointing that, after 20 years of this democratic experience, most of our politicians are yet to learn anything. I don't need the gift of clairvoyance to say that PDP will obviously take Rivers State. AAC, they don't have the structures on ground. I think the worst they can do is what has happened so far, delay the coalition and delay the announcement of the results. Because AAC, they don't have the structures. They don't have the capacity. It will take more than a miracle for AAC to win an election in Rivers State. We know that. Where are you even going to start with to rig the elections? Because elections are not just rigged. These figures won't just come out automatically. You have to rig right from the polling units, and results are collected, and there are agents there watching everything. How would you even rig? The capacity to rig is not even there. Let's say if it was APC and they had some structures on ground, maybe they would have stood a chance of, ousting the incumbent. But with AAC, I think they have zero chance. I don't think they'll go far. I think the worst has happened in Rivers State. The worst has happened, and I think on 13th, INEC will continue with the coalition process, and I think it's PDP's to win.
Those are serious questions.
And Rivers PDP, AAC row over alleged 3 billion naira offer. Who do we believe this time around? Because once again, we have the blame finger. The governorship candidate says he was offered 3 billion naira to step down and just take a back seat. And others have said, well, Governor Wike won the election. Why does he need to bribe you? And if he would even bribe you, do you understand how much 3 billion naira is?
It's an interesting thing. I don't trust politicians. There's none of them that is believable as far as I'm concerned in this game. In the Rivers issue, we know the true two parties. Forget about all the other pawns that are on the chessboard. You have Wike on one side, you have Amici on the other side. Who is AAC? Have you heard of AAC before now? That's Amici. So whatever they are doing are just intrigues and games, political games within themselves out there, And it's never about the people. That's what saddens me. This is about the control of the cookie jar. It's nothing about service or development or the people of Rivers State.
So first of all, I think it's sad. It's sad that every other state has been able to move forward, and where we are in Rivers State, we shouldn't be. Rivers State is blessed. Rivers State is better than that. Rivers State deserves a lot more than what we are seeing. And so we need to be able to address the fundamental issues. An election was held. Collation had started. And then you stop the collation on the basis that there was widespread violence. A few days later, you then come back to say that you have collated results and then there was no violence. It doesn't tell well. So I don't know what's going on. I think it's a very difficult place to be, where you're going 3 weeks after and elections have not been announced, results have not been announced. I believe personally that the entire process is compromised. And what I would have done if I were in INEC would be to just scrap it all and do it all again. Sincerely, yes, because who is going to believe the results of the election today? 3 weeks later, who has had custody of the result sheets? Which result sheets in Nigeria today would you have kept? Which vault did you keep it in that human beings did not have access to it? Are you saying that everybody will trust that those results that have been kept 3 weeks ago have not been tampered with? We don't know. Too many rumors, too many questions. After keeping it for so long, scrap it. Start all over again. It should never have been stopped in the first place.
Okay, we know what's happened concerning the AAC in Rivers State. Just recently, the deputy governorship candidate of the AAC defected to the PDP. The PDP governorship gubernatorial candidate, Yusuf, has also accused the AAC candidate of being a puppet of the APC in Rivers State. Is this true?
What I've always known about any human being is that there's no human spirit that can be dominated, no human spirit can be made a puppet. It doesn't exist. It has always failed and it will always fail. Anybody who tries that logic, anybody who tries that strategy will always fail. It never works. The human being is an independent being. You can't control him. Now I know, because I was there when the discussions was made between AAC and APC, that none of what was listed in that whole list by the deputy governor is true. I witnessed it. It wasn't the case. It wasn't the case. You had a candidate that was brought in and a party that was selected 3 days to an election. There's no time that you're going to sit down and write out all of those things that were said. I don't believe that Nigerians should sit back and just believe everything that they read. So for me, I don't think it's true. I think the PDP in this particular case is over-exaggerating something that was not the case. What convinced the deputy governor, former deputy governor for AAC to defect, only he can answer. We heard that he was induced by money, that he was paid for it. Maybe that's the case. I don't know.
So are you saying you are the governorship candidate
I am.
for the APC?
Absolutely.
Are you saying that there's not been any kind of collaboration between alleged collaboration
there was.
between the APC and the AAC?
Absolutely, there is. But what I'm saying is that you remember that the deputy governor candidate for the AAC listed a whole list of things that he said was an agreement between the AAC and Governor Rotimi Amechi. I said that is not true. That long list is not true. That much I'm certain about. What was agreed was very simple. There's a party called the AAC and there's a party called the APC, that they would come together in a joint, to form a joint government to work on an election, to win an election, and set about as to how they were going to move forward in the state. But that the puppet and all of that, I think that's an insult on any human being.
The Court of Appeal in Abuja has granted permission to the People's Democratic Party and its presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar to serve their petition challenging the outcome of the February 23, 2019 election on President Muhammadu Buhari through substituted means.
PDP to serve the petition in this matter on Mr. Muhammadu Buhari. You know, we have already served on INEC and also on APC. So today we are happy this order has been granted to personally serve this petition by what we call substituted means. And we're going now to serve the copy on the party, and that is the order of the court.
A three-man bench which sat in a pre-hearing session of the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal granted the request contained in the petition's ex parte application that Buhari, who is the second respondent to the petition, be served through any senior official or an officer of the APC at the party's secretariat in Abuja. Granting the ex parte application, Justice Abdul Aboki, who led the panel and delivered the lead ruling, said it is in the interest of justice to grant the prayers in the petitioner's application. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Yakubu Dogara, has assured Nigerians that the House would pass the 2019 budget upon resumption of plenary by Tuesday, April 2nd.
The integrity of the budget selection process has always been the bane of national budgets. I regret to say that until we eliminate these problems, we will always have non-implementable national budgets which cannot be relied upon by policymakers in establishing spending priorities. We took the bold step of addressing this challenge by passing a constitutional amendment bill which sought to compel the executive to submit the budget proposals to the National Assembly not later than 90 days to the end of the fiscal year.
At the third public hearing on the national budget, the Speaker, who blamed the delay to the late submission of the money bill by the executive arm of government, expressed regret that previous budgets had not scored up to 45% performance.
The Nigerian Christian Pilgrims Commission has tasked youth nationwide to embrace the new challenges of national development. The Executive Secretary of the NCPC, Tor Uja, while calling on politicians to engage young Nigerians in governance, also urged youth nationwide to be more committed to the development of the country, saying that they are the leaders.
I think any nation that wants to make progress must accord respect, dignity, and offer support to its youth. I don't believe in what they say youth are the leaders of tomorrow. Youth are the leaders of now. I would like the Nigerian youth, beginning with you as a strong leadership group of the youth and of the nation, to begin to assert yourself now. And it's not an assertion of money, but it's an assertion of ideas, of action, and of involvement in the socio-political terrain of our nation. I would like, first of all, to ask our political parties and also our political leaders to invest more in the proper areas of development in our nation. They should invest more in our youth, invest more in our women, and invest more in our rural communities. These are the three strategic groups that require strategic investment. We also need to ensure that the investment is production oriented. It is not enough to eat, it's more important to produce what we eat. And I want our youth to lead the way in generating a production-driven economy.
And we wrap up the show today with Today in Political History. And that's all on Plus Politics today. See you again tomorrow from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Make it a date. I am Mariana Cohn. Have a good evening.